Do you have an idea that can revolutionize the food industry? Be part of the Global Food Tech Challenge, an initiative launched by the United Arab Emirates, and stand a chance to win a share of $1 million. Visit www.foodtechchallenge.com to find out how you can participate.
Support for Sustainability Defined comes from NLX, the makers of JuiceBox, the best-selling electric car home charging station. The JuiceBox smart charger enables EV drivers to charge their cars with the cleanest and cheapest energy available. More online at juiceboxstore.com.
All right, listeners, welcome back to Sustainability Defined, where Scott and I are here defining sustainability, one topic and one bad joke at a time. This is episode 48 on careers in sustainability. Scott, we've been excited about doing an episode on careers for a long time. I know listeners are too, and we are finally here.
We're here, Jay, and I think that some listeners might be like, oh, I'm not looking for a career in sustainability. And yeah, some of this might not totally resonate with you, but I think there's general career advice in here too, Jay, don't you think?
I actually think that's a great way to put it, Scott. But, really, shouldn't everyone be looking for some kind of sustainability career? There are all kinds, as we'll get into.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the outline for the episode. First, we'll talk about what a career in sustainability means. Then we'll talk about what does the sustainability job market look like. Third, Jay and I will detail our personal experiences in the sustainability career job hunt. It wasn't all easy, was it, Jay?
No, sir.
Okay. Fourth, resources that are available to listeners. And last, we'll tell you about our awesome interviewee, Trish Kenlon, founder of Sustainable Career Pathways.
So, Scott, let's get the party started and ask, what is a career in sustainability? Defining a career in sustainability is almost as challenging as defining sustainability itself. I mean, Scott, we haven't even completely defined sustainability after 4 years and nearly 50 episodes of this podcast. Will we ever?
I don't think so, and that's kind of by design. So,
listeners, you are stuck with us.
We don't want to be out of our non-paying jobs.
And there's no way we're going to design ourselves out of relevance. Come on.
Okay, so broadly we can say that sustainability careers center on minimizing environmental and health-related risks while inducing organizational growth. Now, granted, that's a pretty general and business-centric definition, but to be honest, finding a definition in the first place was tough. The good news is Bard University breaks down sustainability careers into 3 different pathways that help compartmentalize this massive field.
Number 1, Scott, is policy. This refers to efforts to change laws, regulations, and policies on behalf of the environment or broader social issues. Those pursuing a career in sustainability policy can work for the government, in large businesses or nonprofits, or outside the system in non-governmental organizations.
So number 2 is business. If policy work is about bettering the rules, business positions involve improving social and environmental impact while operating a financially viable organization, either profit or nonprofit. These business positions could be organizations that focus on sustainability or those that are simply trying to minimize their impact.
And number 3 is education. Educators work to change the minds of others by communicating the scientific and moral dimensions of the sustainability challenges we face. Those pursuing a role in sustainability education can find a role in a wide range of fields, from traditional professors and researchers to filmmakers, journalists, and artists. Shout out to episode 27 on sustainability and art.
And within these pathways, there are many different types of roles. Naturally, each role will require a unique mix of skills. For example, financial roles within that business pathway could require strong quantitative skills and Microsoft Excel experience. Who doesn't love spreadsheets? Jay, you love spreadsheets.
I do love spreadsheets.
While analyst roles within the policy pathway might require strong research and persuasive writing skills. Nevertheless, most sustainability roles will require some mix of the following overarching skills, which you can emphasize in your applications and interviews.
Right. So running down the list, we have analytical skills, such as locating, collecting, analyzing and presenting information. We have problem-solving skills, like implementing research-supported best practices and creatively tackling a problem. And then, of course, you have communication and interpersonal skills, meaning convening with teams to communicate and advance communal goals.
And yeah, that last one, Jay, communication is super important because a lot of sustainability roles are about getting people to buy in and care about this issue enough to act on it in their day-to-day job, be they in operations or procurement or whatever it is.
Right. No small task, really.
No small task. And it's also important to note that not all sustainability jobs have the same amount of quote-unquote sustainability to them. There's a wide variety here. Jobs in sustainability can have sustainability as the core focus, a main responsibility, or a small aspect of the role.
And we also want to include here jobs that may not even have the word sustainability in them, but that still advance important goals in the name of sustainability. I can discuss more on my experience here in a few minutes. But until then, listeners, as you sit on the edge of your seats, let's talk about the sustainability job market. So, as our last section just explained, defining a quote-unquote sustainability job is tough. And relatedly, finding good stats on the sustainability job market is challenging too.
But we found them, Jay. We found them.
We did. It's never underestimate our research skills here on this podcast, Scott. Our main definitive source for information on this growing sector is the GreenBiz State of the Profession report.
And GreenBiz's most recent version of this report, it was published in 2018, look for an update in late 2020, focuses on a central trend in the field, the evolution from the sustainability generalist to a growing emphasis on the sustainability specialist. The report claims that the sustainability field has evolved from its tactical origins of reporting and stakeholder engagement to that of business strategy, change management, and on-the-ground execution. Those sound like fun. Don't you think, Jay? Much better.
I would love to
reporting.
do any of those.
So a caveat to this report, though, it focuses on large companies. 42% of GreenBiz's survey respondents came from companies with over $1 billion in annual revenue.
Let's break the evolution from generalist to specialist down a little further. We like two areas where the GreenBiz report illustrates this evolution. Number one, corporate sustainability reports are now mere table stakes, which I love.
You love it because it's just, you like steak.
Okay, listeners, don't hate me, but I do love the occasional steak, and who can live without tables? So, 86% of the companies in the S&P 500 index published sustainability or corporate responsibility reports in 2018. That's a significant change from 2011, when just under 20% of S&P 500 companies published such reports. So this means that these reports can no longer be just glossy brochures when everyone's making them. Corporations are being asked to provide context for their sustainability data, specifically the financial implications for ESG performance, which stands for environmental, social, and governance performance.
So those trying to break into or advance in their sustainability careers can take advantage of this trend, Jay, that you just mentioned, by becoming more familiar with reporting systems, knowing how to analyze and manage data, and understanding the ESG landscape. Plus, a lot of entry-level jobs revolve around data management and reporting. I know I just put down reporting, but it is really critical to a lot of sustainability roles and programs. And there are a number of reporting systems out there, from CDP to SASB. And finding a way to get experience with reporting into these could be a big resume boost.
So number two, as far as the evolution from sustainability generalist to specialist, is that sustainability initiatives are themselves creating even more opportunities. As a part of its report, GreenBiz does a survey of sustainability program budgets. The biggest area of sustainability budget growth between 2016 and 2018 was in what GreenBiz calls sustainability product and service innovation, which rose from 46% to 54%. This essentially refers to investing in new types of products or services that generate revenue with a tangible environmental impact.
An example of a sustainability product or service innovation would be applying circular economy models to current business practices. One of our favorite examples of this comes from VF Corporation. They own a number of well-known apparel brands like North Face, Timberland, Vans, and others. the company is committed to circular business models like re-commerce and rental as a core part of its strategy. It wants to be, quote, a leader of large-scale commercialization of circular business models by 2030. Now, it's going to need people to help figure out exactly how to do that and to test possibilities in the market.
Scott, I also will share that VF Corp recently moved its headquarters here to Denver, so they must have heard that we could be neighbors. But alas, listeners, more on the circular economy, which Scott touched on quite a bit there in episode 22. So generally, we think the teams behind these sustainability products and services call for both general and specific skills. Project management and strategy are important, but so are specific skills like chemistry, life cycle analysis, and finance. So listeners wanting to capitalize on the opportunities these initiatives create can illustrate their general skills like project management and strategy making. At the same time, more specific skills like understanding of chemistry, the life cycle analysis and finance we mentioned can all make clear the role you would fill on the team.
Man, I wish I knew more about life cycle analysis. I actually have a meeting tomorrow to talk with the life cycle analysis expert on aluminum cans, and I just wish I knew that on my own. But okay. Lastly, under this job market section, we want to give a shout out to the clean energy job market. This is an additional sector to help keep an eye on. It's not necessarily the same as a general sustainability job, but we were excited to see that clean energy jobs grew by 3.6% in 2018 with 110,000 net new jobs.
All right. So listeners, we're going to move now into our personal experiences in the sustainability career.
It's story time.
Sit down, grab your favorite beverage, put your feet up, and get comfortable. So while it's tough to make generalizations that apply to everyone, we hope the insights we've already provided have helped. We also hope that describing our own experiences, which are pretty distinct from each other, can help you add some context to your big picture career thoughts. All right, so off to the races. Scott, let's go.
All right, so my story starts at Georgetown University, where I discovered that my passion for government and economics could be applied in the environmental field. And when it came time to graduate, I wanted to build on my strength of research and writing, but also further explore this application. So I went straight through from undergrad to graduate school with a joint law degree and Master's of Public Affairs program at Indiana University. And all of my graduate studies were focused on environmental law and policy. And because I went straight through to graduate school, I kept doing internships. And my first was as a sustainability reporting intern at Dairy Management, Inc., which is more the private sector about how do we sell more dairy. Second, I did a law and policy internship at the U.S. Department of the Interior, so that was government. And then I was a legal intern at Natural Resources Defense Council, a nonprofit. So with all these internships, I was in my area of interest. With the last two, I was in the city I wanted to end up in so I could network in Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned, this is in a variety of organizations since I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go. After I graduated, I was very lucky and got a job at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration as part of their Attorney Honors Program. So NOAA is a federal agency that focuses on marine sanctuaries, marine life, weather, a lot of stuff around oceans. And I love the mission and the people. But it felt like I was doing a lot of just advising. I couldn't innovate. I wasn't finding efficiencies because my job was to focus simply on the legal issues. And then came Jay and the podcast, and I found my creative outlet. And I was able to talk with experts and build up credibility in the sustainability space, which I wanted to break into. So I parlayed what I was doing with the podcast into a job that had opened up with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's Sustainability and Circular Economy program. For that circular economy episode that Jay mentioned earlier, we actually interviewed the hiring director on the show. And then 2 days later, she interviewed me for the job, and I got the job.
The most epic career move in podcast history.
Yeah. And that, Jay, though, was a big risk, right? Because I had just been trained for 3 years to be a lawyer. I was in a federal government job where basically they can't fire you. And I was going to this new job that admittedly paid less, and I didn't know where it was all going to lead. And on top of that, the hiring director, she left 2 weeks after I started. And that sort of opening actually creates a lot of opportunity. And they hired a new senior director, but they let me keep control of the major national recycling initiative. And that was really critical because it gave me a network and expertise in a specific part of the sustainability field. And it led to my current job. So my current position now is as VP of Sustainability at the Can Manufacturers Institute. That's a trade association that represents those that make food cans and beverage cans. So I am still on cloud nine about this job. It's just a perfect fit for me. One of my responsibilities involves wearing my lawyer hat again, which is nice. Dusted it off, put it back on. And
looks good on you.
Yeah, right? And I get to follow the recycling policy developments, and there's a lot happening in that space, and make sure that the can's sustainability advantages are understood and acted upon. I write letters to lawmakers, collaborate with our lobbyists, things like that. I also promote what I honestly believe is the most sustainable circular packaging type for food and beverages.
Scott, can I ask a quick question? Would you say you're drinking the Kool-Aid from an aluminum can?
There's no better beverage container to drink Kool-Aid from, Jay. It tastes so cold and delicious. And then you put it in the recycling, and you can be confident that that can is going to get turned into a new can or some other useful recyclable product.
I think that's a resounding yes.
Yes. And then the third part of my role was to devise a strategy to build on the can's leading recycling rate among food and beverage containers to make it even higher. So, such a fun job. And I like to think, Jay, that I've got some lessons learned sprinkled throughout this episode, but let me hit on two from that whole story that y'all were very kind in listening to. One is that good work begets more good work. Expanding the Chamber Foundation's recycling initiative and building working relationships with people in recycling gave me the credibility for my current job. The second piece of advice is know your story. People can help you more if you get more specific. So here's the story of how I learned that lesson. I had been put in touch with a pretty high-level sustainability professional, and we're 20 minutes into chatting, and I told him I want to do something at the intersection of policy and communications. And then we got to, okay, well, do you know what kind of organization you want to do that in or what issue area you want to do that? And I said, I'm not really sure. I really just want an opportunity. And he said, now I'm not really sure who to put you in touch with. And on top of that, you likely got put in touch with me because my friend didn't know who to put you in touch with, right? And he knows that I'm nice and I would talk to you, but it's going to take a lot less meetings and connections to get you to the person that can put you in the right job opportunity, the more specific you can be. So that was a big aha moment. And I've taken that to heart, and we'll talk more in the interview with Trish about how you can get those specifics. And I'm going to throw a third lesson learned in here is that it's important to generate content. Jay and I, we didn't ask anyone's permission to put out the podcast, and that helped solidify our positions as experts in sustainability. But I also post to LinkedIn 3 times a week, so go follow that. Mondays about sustainability, Wednesdays about recycling, Friday something I'm up to. So you should consider generating your own content. And I can tell you that employers are going to look you up on LinkedIn. If they look you up and they see that you have been writing about the subject to which you're applying, you will get instant cred. So start thinking about how you can generate content, and it doesn't have to be all that regular. It could be once a month. And in your post, you can engage the people that you want to get connected to by tagging them. It's a great way to network.
Excellent. So listeners, here comes your break. Get up, stretch your legs.
Yeah.
Get a snack, take your dog out, whatever you do.
But Jay, they got to buckle up for your story now.
Right. Well, they've learned so many beautiful lessons in yours. Let's hope there's still some to glean coming up. So listeners, as a refresher, I identified my environmental interest early on and combined that with my fascination of cities. I studied urban planning and real estate through undergrad at the University of Michigan, Go Blue, and grad school at Cornell, where I will note I was not in Andy Bernard's Here Comes Treble a cappella group for all our office
Which was
bands.
your loss.
God, Scott, had I been able to, I think I would have been on a different career track.
You have the voice of an angel, though. So
wow, the nice baritone. So I will say that there are certainly sustainability undertones in urban planning and real estate, but neither one is objectively environmentally or socially oriented. So I did find it tough when I tried to take this background and apply it directly to a sustainability specific role. So early on in my career, I first started by trying to incorporate sustainability into my day job. And Scott, we know a lot of folks actually wrote in kind of about that, how to do that. I will say it proved challenging at companies that I was at that were mostly focused on real estate analytics and strategy. So while my companies would voice support for sustainability at large, it quickly fell into it's outside the scope of our business bucket, which I do think is understandable. And listeners, I'll note that my frustration with my lack of progress and desire to do something is what actually helped spark the Sustainability Defined podcast as we know it today. I'll come back to this nugget in a second. So moving on, some sustainability roles did exist in my organizations. For example, JLL has an energy and sustainability services team, but I wasn't coming from an engineering background and couldn't see a real way to break in without directly applicable and technical skills, which I just didn't think I had. Interviewing JLL's then CEO in our podcast episode 19 on sustainability in the C-suite,
he had a great accent.
Oh man, this wonderful British accent. I will say that helped put me on the map internally for sustainability opportunities, but I couldn't get my hands on much that would turn into a meaningful component of my daily role. And then, unlike Scott, I wasn't set in one city. I went from DC to San Francisco, and then, as regular listeners know, I decided to take time off to travel Europe while based in London. While traveling, I explored the global sustainability scene and worked on my own sustainability consulting, in addition to collecting content for the podcast. And of course, Scott, side bonus, I met my girlfriend Anna out in London, which was the ultimate catch, of course.
Anna.
So, moving into my current position now, I'm now with a boutique real estate developer called Storybuilt. I'm helping them start their new Denver office as an acquisitions and development associate. And Scott, I think like you, I'm pretty ecstatic about it. And listeners, as we'll discuss coming up with Trish, after living in these different cities, I specifically chose to move back to Denver. This helped me focus my networking and ultimately land my current role. So I know we'll come back to this in a few minutes. Generally, Storybuilt builds walkable, transit-oriented homes, townhomes, apartments, and condos near city downtowns. What I like about this is that there are clear sustainability benefits to building this type of real estate as opposed to developing the suburbs. And this is key, even though that connection isn't present in my job title or job description, really. So balancing this role and the podcast, I've found that I'm now exercising both my sustainability passion and professional training and interests on two parallel tracks. Time does get short, but it's nice to be able to exercise my passions for both simultaneously. So let me back up and share a couple lessons learned. Number one, don't leave it to a job post to connect the sustainability dots for you. When I was on the job hunt, I found myself feeling like I was just being strung along by the nose towards any job posting that had the word sustainability in the title.
Strung along by the nose also sounds painful.
It was like physically and mentally
strung
just
along by
agonizing.
The nose? Right.
Strung. Let's roll it.
Stung by the nose. I don't know. Go on.
So listeners, I would lean less on jargon, which the sustainability field is infamous for, and remember to drill into the job description to truly understand the role you're considering. It may actually not be for you. And then number two, don't forget the role of passion projects, especially if you can't fit sustainability into your current job. This podcast is the perfect example. By starting something on your own, you show folks your dedication to the field and initiative to make things happen. Just be prepared to kiss a lot of free time goodbye, especially if you're balancing a full-time role at the same time as Scott, you and I both do now. All right, listeners, thank you for listening to my story.
Yeah, and I think, Jay, one thread I want to highlight on both is that people who are listening to this podcast, like, oh, Jay and Scott, they started this thing and they're probably just waltzed right into sustainability jobs. And the jobs that you and I are both so happy about right now, we both took risks in our decision making. Like I said, leaving that law path and taking that job at the Chamber Foundation was a huge risk, but I knew I would be exposed to businesses and have an opportunity to do something like I did with that recycling initiative. And then you leaving your job and going to Europe and getting exposed to new ideas there and taking the space to think through what you want. It's not like you just applied to a job and said, oh, I run a podcast and this and that, and then got your current role. Like, we both had to take a little bit of circuitous route, which is often the case with people's career stories.
I think that's exactly right, Scott. And I don't think, and I think both of us have learned that, like, the waiting for the perfect sustainability job is not going to happen.
Yeah.
You've got to get out and just act on your interests. And then, kind of as we're both demonstrating here, a lot of this stuff just tends to fall in line.
And network.
Just love it.
All right. So you want to act on this stuff. Well, let's talk resources available to you. And there's a ton out there. And remember that all the resources we're going to mention in this section, they're going to be linked to in the show notes on our website. So let's get right to the meat of it. When it comes to finding sustainability job openings, we do have some favorite methods.
Number one is search engines. With some tailoring of your search preferences, you can find great sustainability openings on search engines and online platforms like Google and LinkedIn. Google has a jobs page that allows you to pull openings from across the internet based on your keywords, and LinkedIn does much of the same. What I like, and I know what you like, Scott, about LinkedIn specifically, is the ability to learn more about the company within the interface and see if you're connected to anyone that works there that could be a helpful foot in the door. Indeed is another good search engine here.
And then second is classic job boards that curate their openings. Our favorites here include GreenBiz Jobs, Net Impact's job board, and BSR's job openings list among its more than 250 member companies.
Number three, we've got email lists. There are a bunch of curated newsletters that often have openings not found on other job boards. Our favorite is Ed Carley's Clean Energy and Sustainability Jobs list. Ed sends out a weekly email with very well curated openings.
Yeah, he even, not only is it the jobs, but he also has a nice section of like an article he's reading that week, and it's often like a really insightful article.
Absolutely.
Sure. So number 4 is recruiters. WineReb Group Sustainability Recruiting and Acre, which now has a U.S. office, are 2 sustainability-focused recruiting firms that are definitely worth looking into. Both list on their websites what roles they're currently recruiting for. Trish Kenlon, who we'll be speaking with in just a minute, notes that these recruiting agencies may be more relevant for the listeners who have some experience with sustainability and are looking more for mid to upper level roles. Still, though, I would recommend for those that are earlier on, go check them out. See what these high-level roles require and start thinking about how to get experiences that when you get to that point, you can have a bunch of experiences to show over time.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal idea, Scott. And listeners, these are really just our favorites. For more job boards and other resources, check out our upcoming guest Trish's site at sustainablecareerpathways.com. On her job resources page, she has dozens of job boards that are even categorized by field. It's really well done.
Yeah, so second, let's run through some of our favorite professional organizations for those looking to expand their networks in the field.
Well, Scott, we of course have to mention Net Impact, which is where you and I spotted each other from across the room just about 4 years ago.
Just like it was yesterday.
Oh, swoon. Net Impact hosts national conferences and also runs local chapters all across the U.S. They also have some good career resources on their website as well.
GreenBiz is also up top. They host premier sustainability events around the country, in addition to publishing news about the many facets of sustainability. We suggest subscribing to their weekly email newsletters. Monday is general, and the other days are focused on topics like the circular economy and transportation. Bonus here, check out episode 30 on green finance because it features our interview with GreenBiz chairman and co-founder Joel McCower.
And Scott, that absolutely legendary mustache.
Oh, so good.
Lest we forget. And listeners, on top of those big ones, don't forget to look for professional organizations more specific to your own field. For example, working in real estate and urban planning, I'm a fan of the Urban Land Institute and the U.S. Green Building Council.
And there are often local meetups too. Green Drinks is an international movement where people meet up informally each month in cities all around the world. And the DC Green Drinks is run by my friend Spencer Schecht, is really robust. So if you're in DC, definitely check out DC Green Drinks.
And again, Trish has a thorough list of all of these networks on her website, as well as we're probably making clear there is plenty of great stuff to dig in through there as well.
All right, so we talked jobs boards, we talked networking. Third, if you think you need some additional help from an outside source, you might want to give career coaches some consideration. You'll hear all about Trish coming up, and she's a coach, but there are others too. Trish selflessly recommends Shannon Hood and Aaron Ewart, who both post great tips and jobs on their feeds, so follow them on LinkedIn and sign up for their newsletters. Shannon's Walk of Life Careers has a web-based online self-study course, and she has a book coming out later this year with the insights from that course, so those might be good options for those who are like, coaching, that's really expensive, which totally fair.
And speaking of books, don't forget your reading. If you like podcasts, audiobooks might be a good way to go. Local libraries often have a wide selection of audiobooks available for free on these topics.
Libraries, the best.
Underutilized, underappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you looking to change careers to get into sustainability, we came across a thought-provoking article from Career Shifters called How to Change Careers When You Have No Idea What You're Doing.
Great headline.
It includes unconventional tips on changing careers and goes beyond the basics like network, volunteer, and polish your resume to include tips like look for people, not for jobs, and do it with others, not alone. We suggest giving it a read.
In addition, Trish recommends Katie Cross's book, Profession and Purpose, which is available on Amazon. Apparently, folks are supposed to get the second edition with the blue cover. She's the managing director of the Center for Energy Development and the Global Environment at Duke's Fuqua School of Business, and she literally wrote the book on careers and sustainability.
Hey, are you a listener? Hey,
you.
Are you a listener who doesn't envision a career in sustainability for yourself, but who still wants to support the sustainability profession as a whole? Be a climate advocate and check out episode 42 on climate advocacy while you're at it.
All right, let's breathe. We are done. We do want to thank those of you who wrote in. So wasn't it heartwarming, Jay, to see the engagement around this episode, unlike any other episode we've done. So it was wonderful to see the questions just roll in.
Yeah, really a topic that folks are really, really engaged about. So we did our best to include answers to your exact questions in the intro and look forward to covering the rest in our conversation with Trish coming up. So thanks again to all those that wrote in for helping guide this episode that I know we're
Jay,
all pretty excited about.
we literally had the questions up as we did the interview with Trish to make sure we hit them. So
yeah,
they were helpful.
Yeah. So listeners, if you hear your question, just know we're thinking about you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Scott, tell us a little bit more about Trish, our esteemed guest coming up.
Okay, so Trish is the founder of Sustainable Career Pathways, where she provides career coaching services to lucky individuals and hosts on her website tons of incredibly helpful sustainability career resources. Seriously, check it out. I know we've said it a bunch of times, but it's that good. Her background includes roles at IBM and Taylor and the Environmental Defense Fund.
Trish is a true friend of the podcast, making generous introductions for us and connecting us with leaders around the country, and we are so excited to have her on the show. Do you have an idea that can revolutionize the food industry? Don't miss out on the chance to be part of the $1 Million Global Food Tech Challenge, a one-of-a-kind initiative launched by the United Arab Emirates. You could be one of 4 teams, each winning $250,000 in prize money and accelerator support. Submit your application by February 13th, and you'll get the opportunity to hear feedback from a judging panel of academic scholars, policymakers, and industry experts. Be among the top 10 shortlisted finalists and you'll be matched with a mentor to further perfect your pitch ahead of a final awards ceremony taking place at New York University, Abu Dhabi this April. Visit www.foodtechchallenge.com to find out how you can participate.
Support for Sustainability Defined comes from NLX, the makers of JuiceBox, the best-selling electric car home charging station. The JuiceBox can charge an EV up to 13 times faster than other home charging stations. JuiceBox's smart charging Wi-Fi features also help drivers charge with the cheapest and cleanest energy available. Schedule car charging when electricity rates are lower, or with JuiceNet Green software, charge with the cleanest energy on the grid. Sync your EV charging to times when solar and wind power are at maximum production and fossil fuel power sources are at a minimum. More online at juiceboxstore.com. All right, listeners, we are now talking with Trish Kenlon, founder of Sustainable Career Pathways, someone who has helped us in our sustainability careers, and we can speak from personal experience, knows her stuff. So Trish, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I think what's unique about you, Trish, is not only do you run this website that provides all these resources, but you have a professional background in sustainability, you have your MBA, and in terms of your experience, you went from IBM to Environmental Defense Fund and Ann Taylor. So talk to us about how you found your interest in sustainability and how you were able to break into the field.
Sure. So I was a business major at Carnegie Mellon, and when I graduated, all I knew was that I really wanted to work in operational efficiency for a big company. It's very nerdy, I know. I had learned all about Six Sigma, and I loved using Visio, and I was ready to help eliminate wasted effort. So I went to work for Bank of America and later CPI and IBM, working on projects that helped me learn about communicating change management within a large organization and how to manage teams. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I enjoyed the skills I was using, but I didn't really care much about the projects I was working on. At the time, I was upgrading financial software for the federal government, so it was not very inspiring.
It's good they have software.
Yes, it was, but it was, yeah. So that was around when GE was touting their Eco-Imagination program and Green Order was getting well known. And so I started getting excited about sustainability as a possible career path. And I'd always known I'd wanted to go back and get my MBA. And I knew I wanted to end up in New York after school. It was really important to me to start building my new professional network in the city I wanted to wind up in. So I went to NYU, and I treated NYU as an incredibly limited time opportunity to reach out to as many people as I possibly could to figure this whole sustainability thing out. I had lunches, coffees, quick phone chats. I went to all of the conferences.
So you were pretty methodical. You had a plan.
I don't know if you could call it a plan. I would say I kind of tried everything. Like I hit the pavement. I was out there. And, I also, of course, ran the sustainability team of our Net Impact chapter. And so all that legwork really paid off. When I applied to the Environmental Defense Fund's Climate Corps Fellowship, which was in its second year, the hiring manager had received a copy of my resume from 3 different people.
Wow.
It's kind of hard to ignore a candidate when you get the resume 3 times.
Who is this Trish Kenlon?
Who's this girl that just won't leave me alone? So after an incredible summer, I got a part-time internship during the school year with Ann Taylor through the very first person I'd done an informational interview with in the weeks before school had started. And so again, the whole networking thing coming into play. And eventually that internship turned into a full-time job. And so I got to live the dream of working in sustainability for Ann Taylor. So when I tell that story, it kind of flows and it sounds like I had a master plan that unfolded perfectly. But it was really a lot of research and networking and just kind of putting in the time to figure out how my skills were relevant and to meet the right people who would take a chance on me and give me relevant experience.
And Trish, you mentioned the MBA in there, and this was a pretty common question that our listeners submitted. Would you say that you saw that as a necessary step for you to advance within sustainability? Because I know a lot of folks are thinking, is this something that I must do if I want to move forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for me personally, my MBA was absolutely critical to my sustainability journey because it gave me the time and the space to really explore these interests and to figure out how I fit into this new space. I'd say if somebody is thinking about going back to grad school now, the programs are they're so different, and all of the different career options that are out there are just so varied. You need to put a lot of thought into kind of what you want to do when you're finished to make sure that you're choosing the right type of program to kind of get where you want to go.
I love that. And I think that's so true, that you should not go to grad school until you're very clear on why you're going to that program and how you're going to use the skills and the degree to get exactly where you want to go. So, because it's a lot of time and money to go to grad school.
Absolutely. And right now, sustainability, especially at the graduate level, sustainability education is super popular. And so you're seeing a lot of schools kind of scramble to pull a program together. And so you're going to get all kinds of different approaches to teaching it and different emphasis in terms of what skills you're going to get when you come out of it. Maybe you'll have more of a policy bent to it. Maybe you'll have more of like a business bent to it. So you really need to think about, okay, what do I want to do when I'm finished? And then, kind of where do I need to go to help me get there?
And one more thing on this also is I often tell people not all sustainability programs are the same. You should look at their course offerings.
Yeah.
Some offer a lot more than others, a lot more diversity. They might have a sustainability program, but the thing you want to go to a sustainability program for, they have no classes in. So,
Yep.
Well, and guys, it also sounds like we have to, you start with the end in mind, right? So it's kind of like what, Trish, to your point, what is this program going to get me, especially now that we have such a diversification in programs that are out there. But great advice there, especially to two folks, Scott and myself, that went straight into grad school. So, Trish, now with this as context, what led you to move and start Sustainable Career Pathways?
Well, so I mentioned how much networking I did during school, and I certainly didn't stop once I had the job at Ann. I think anyone I've ever met knows that I work in sustainability and am always trying to learn more about it and meet new people in the space. And a natural byproduct of that is that whenever a friend is talking with someone who's trying to break into the space, my lovely face pops into their mind and they suggest reaching out to me for ideas and to learn more about how I did it. And one day I was chatting with someone and going over some of my favorite resources for what felt like the millionth time, when it dawned on me that I really should start writing these things down. And I realized pretty quickly that the amount of information I wanted to share with folks could not be contained in a mere Word document, and that I really needed to build out a website. And once I had the website up, the number of people reaching out to me for help just increased exponentially. And, I realized a few really important things. There are a lot of people out there that need help navigating the space, like a lot. And also that I'm really good at helping people to find their path and get organized around their job search. So that was 2 years ago, and now it's my full-time job. It's my new dream job.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you find a way to keep up with this, because I know you also have a great family that you support. And I think one of the things that's so awesome about the website you've created is this extensive library of interviews. You conducted with a lot of different leaders. I'm on there, so, that's nice. I appreciated that.
That's one of my favorites. Check it out.
Check it out. And so in each of these interviews, you ask questions like, what do you actually do all day in this sustainability job? What was your path to this role? What's your advice to someone interested in a role like this? I think a lot of the questions that our listeners care about, you have those right on your website for anyone to look up. But do you have a favorite insight or piece of advice that an interviewee has shared with you?
I'd say Joe McMahon, who is the Vice President of Sustainability Initiatives for the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. It's quite a long title. He said something that really stuck with me. He's worked for, I think he worked for the Peace Corps. He's worked for Mars and Coca-Cola. And those are really highly coveted companies to work for. But his favorite job has been his current one, And it's not as glamorous, as working for Coke, and not many people have heard of the organization, but he's been able to make a huge impact there, and he really finds the work that he's doing truly fulfilling. He's done some really groundbreaking things there with building out sustainability resources for basically the entire dairy industry. And it's just an important reminder for me that just because you haven't heard of a company before doesn't mean it's not going to be an amazing, worthwhile experience for you. So, definitely, sure, it's great to go for, the Googles of the world and things like that. But just remember, there's so many other companies out there that could be just perfect for you.
And that's oftentimes the companies that need the most help, and maybe less applicants might actually be easier to get the job.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Just quickly, I have a Dairy Management Inc. story. That was my first internship in grad school. I was a sustainability reporting intern at Dairy Management Inc. And I had a lot of fun coming up with their measurement framework and all this stuff. But the best part about the job, free chocolate milk. And it was great, but also tough because you really got to, check yourself. I mean, I was like 2 cups max, Scott. Okay, you get one at 10 a.m., you get one at 3 p.m. So...
yeah, it's important to set limits at work.
Well, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think chocolate milk is increasingly labeled as a good post-workout recovery drink. So, Scott, I think that might have just been your excuse. You worked out twice a day, needed 2 cups a day.
Yeah, or I sat at my desk for 5 hours and then needed more chocolate milk. So
maybe you're doing like leg raises or something under your desk. Anyways, So Trish,
I can't get that picture out of my head now.
Yeah, come on.
Thanks.
People are trying to learn about careers.
The Scott plan. So bigger picture, Trish, we are sure that your coaching clients come to you with all sorts of questions. So we're wondering, what are folks most often wanting help with, and what solutions have you found to help them make progress?
So a lot of people ask me for help with figuring out what roles they should be targeting. So, as you and your listeners know, the sustainability world is vast, and there are a lot of different kinds of jobs that fit under the sustainability umbrella. And it can be really frustrating when you're applying to dozens of jobs online and you don't hear anything back. So a lot of people want to make sure that they're pursuing roles where they at least have a shot at being hired. Mm-hmm. So the solution for this problem is really going to depend a lot on an individual person's skills or background or interests. But one exercise I do with people is to help them, is to get them to write down the answers to a few important questions that can help narrow things down a bit. So that's things like, what's more important to you? Local impact with results that you can see in your own community or state, or larger, potentially global impact that might bring about a bigger change but might be less tangible for you? Or what sector is the right fit for you? There's going to be a very big difference in your experience between working in corporate versus public versus the nonprofit sectors. Then you have to think about, what industry could you work in? It's so tempting to say, oh, I'll work in any industry as long as it's in sustainability. But you really need to think about narrowing it to industries that you have experience in, or that are similar to experiences or industries you've worked in, or are industries you have a genuine in-depth interest in. You also have to think about what functions you're qualified to do. If you really think about it, if you have a degree in architecture, you are unlikely to be qualified for an investment associate role. So, think about your previous work and your education and kind of what that qualifies you for. The next question is, what issues do you want to work on? Are you a circular economy kind of guy? Do you love supply chain? Does the thought of lights on in an office after 10 p.m. make your energy efficiency minded brain just want to explode? You have to figure out what issues you want to focus your efforts on. And then, finally, location. Again, so many people just throw their hands up and say, oh, I'll work anywhere. But you really need to pick one, possibly 2 places to focus on. And it's super important to do this because, we'll talk more about this later, but networking is a huge part of how to look for a job. And a lot of networks are location specific. So, you should be investing a lot of time attending events and growing your network and, just really meeting people in one particular place.
And Trish, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of what these questions are meant to do is narrow the universe of possibilities out there. I think it's very common. I mean, I did this personally, saying, I'm willing to go anywhere, anything that has sustainability in it, I will do. And you think that's going to keep as many doors open as possible. But in reality, I think as you're suggesting, it's almost the inverse. That almost makes things harder. And the more you're able to zero in on, as you're saying, where you are, what skills you have, where you want to focus that impact is maybe the best way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you need to do is you really need to narrow down your job search. And there's a couple of really good reasons why you need to do that. One is that when you are developing what I call your marketing materials, your elevator pitch, your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your cover letter, those sorts of things, you want to be really clear about what it is that you're looking for so that when you're talking to people or when you're sending out your resume or people are looking at you on LinkedIn, it's really easy for them to see what it is that you want so that they can help you. So when you're out there in the world doing all that networking, people can easily say, oh, Jay wants to work in, water issues. And I know somebody who, is great at that and he could chat with them. But if you're kind of saying, scattershot, I don't know, I want to work in sustainability. Maybe I want to be in Chicago. Maybe I want to be in Philadelphia. It's really hard for people to kind of think about, okay, what's my next step to help him out or how can I connect him?
Yeah, and Scott, I think you had a great point about that earlier in the intro about wanting to solicit advice, but essentially not being able to provide enough information for the person you were speaking with to give something meaningful back to you.
Yeah, and that's totally true, and I'm glad, Trish, that you're echoing that. And I'm wondering, Trish, let's say someone is listening to this and they're saying, yeah, sounds great. I'd love it if I could narrow what I want, but I don't know what I want. How do I figure that out? Is it just a matter of me sitting down and asking myself these tough questions and just forcing itself out? Like, how do I get this specificity if I'm not sure?
Sure. Well, so maybe I'll talk a little bit about kind of the natural flow of a job search, and you can kind of see how that kind of comes together. So I really see the first phase of a good organized job search is focused on kind of exploratory networking. So you're going out there, you're meeting people, you're going to events, you're talking to folks, and this is kind of where you're just trying to learn more about what jobs to target, how your skills and experiences fit into the sustainability world, and also kind of identifying any gaps that you might have and coming up with a plan to fill them. This is just where you're doing a lot of networking, but you don't quite have that crisp, this is what I want and this is how to help me part. This is the first phase.
So networking can help you get a handle on that specificity. And while we're talking about networking, I know this is just step one, but do you have your 3 top networking tips that you want to throw out there for listeners?
So I think one of the most important things when you're kind of getting started with networking is that you need to make sure you have the right attitude about networking. So many people get kind of frozen up when they think about networking and they don't want to put themselves out there, and it's very awkward and really you need to make sure that you have the mindset that it's about building relationships with people based on your mutual interest in sustainability. It shouldn't be transactional or only about getting a job. It really should be more about connecting and helping each other out. So I think that can kind of really help calm you down a little bit with networking. Mm-hmm. Also, definitely be respectful of people's time. Don't send your resume in the first email or ask for lunch out of the gate. Just ask for a quick 15-minute chat and be really specific about what you want to talk about. Don't ever say, oh, I hear you in sustainability, let's talk. You want to really mention the specific thing that made you want to talk to them. Things like you see that they have experience in battery storage, or you'd like their advice on how to grow your network in St. Louis or something like that. And always, 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 always include a note with a LinkedIn connection request.
Yes, love that.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, you guys, I'm sure you guys get a lot of requests as well because, you're famous. So
there's the first joke
really
of the interview.
It's really hard to tell what's spam. But people love your show and they're naturally drawn to you, and I'm sure you get lots of people who want to connect with you. But it turns out to be spam, right? You have no idea who genuinely wants to connect or who's just some random person looking to build their network, just in massive numbers. You need a note.
Okay, so be specific about what you want. Make sure you're giving and not just taking. Leave a note on LinkedIn. Those are great tips. I know I took you away from your flow. So what's after networking then in terms of that flow to identify that greater specificity that you need to get better help?
Okay. Well, so hopefully by this point, you've got a really better idea of what it is you're talking about and what it is you're looking for. So you really want to kind of ask yourself those questions we covered and really narrow it down into a single target role, or maybe two, but write it down on a piece of paper to help keep you focused. And then once you have that clear target in mind, then it's time to tailor your marketing materials. You're going to update your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, and your elevator pitch so that it's really, really clear to everyone you're interacting with from this point forward, what it is you're looking for and why you're a good fit for that. And then finally, it's time for the more kind of targeted networking phase. And that's when you're reaching out and making connections with people like you did earlier. But this time you're doing it with a more directed message about, what it is you're looking to do and who it is you're trying to connect with. And so hopefully if you're kind of doing that networking part right, that's going to lead to the interviews and offers and, wonderful new work for you. And I'm going to contradict myself just a little bit here.
We'll allow
it. I know I got to slow down, but I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here just because while it's important to have that target to help you have clarity around your messaging and to help you organize your search, you also need to be flexible in case something awesome you haven't thought of pops up. You really never know what you're going to come across when you're networking. So, stay open to surprises that might work out even better than what you were planning for.
Yeah, Trish, I love that actually, because I think there can be this misconception that you have to know exactly what you want before you go to one of these networking events, when in reality, it's very easy to just spark new types of conversations with folks that expose you to different things and maybe identify pathways you hadn't thought of before. I think that's great. All right, Trish, so we're going to transition now into advice for listeners at different stages of their careers. So we know that we have listeners in all stages of their careers, from students that are struggling to wake up for 9 a.m. classes, all the way over to recognized industry professionals. So let's zero in on maybe this first group of folks being students. So let's say these can be high schoolers, undergrads, or even grad students. So Trish, before they officially enter the working world, how would you suggest they most effectively prepare for their careers in sustainability?
Sure. I'd say my first message is definitely view this time as a student as incredibly precious. I don't know why, but people are usually more willing to talk with and help students than they are working professionals. It's just magic. If you're a student, it opens so many more doors for you. So reach out to as many people as you can and make sure you're learning as much as you can about what you might want to do. And then, try to take classes or get volunteer opportunities or internship experiences that support those interests to really kind of use this time to experiment. And, if you have any class projects, try your best to pick projects that give you an opportunity to practice a skill, like calculating a carbon footprint or doing some benchmarking or something like that. And definitely, as you're looking for your first job, your earlier career jobs, don't be afraid to take skill building jobs, especially if you're early in your career. If you want to be a sustainability consultant someday, you will need to get a job that gives you experience working with clients and doing project management. And you're very unlikely to be hired as an entry-level sustainability consultant right out of undergrad. So you need to start somewhere and be willing to take a job that, okay, maybe it doesn't have sustainability in the title, but maybe you're building something that is going to really help you later on in your career. And also, if you can, try to find a mentor who can advise you throughout your career. It's always easier when you have the advice of someone who's gone before you.
I think that's all great advice. And what I would add, in addition to being a precious time because you can get people to more likely talk to you, is that as a student, yes, your earnings potential isn't very high, but what you do have a lot of is time. So like you said, finding a good use of that time to try new things, to get those skills and that experience that matches up with job descriptions that are out there. That's another good thing to look up, is just look at different job descriptions and see what they're asking for. And then make sure that you're getting that experience in your classes or outside of the classroom that align with that.
Absolutely.
So maybe let's go to the next type of listener that we think is out there. And we know these people are out there because we got a lot of questions on this sort of part of people's careers, is they want to pursue a career in sustainability, but they're not there yet. They could be new grads, young professionals working outside the sustainability industry. How do you suggest that these folks get moving? I know that we had one listener ask a question about they want to break in, but they see a lot of managerial positions. How do they find the entry-level ones and make clear that there's someone who can add value?
Sure. So you're going to hear me say this word a lot today, but get started networking. And again, this is that exploratory networking, right? This is just going out there, meeting people and checking stuff out. Tell people about what your interests are and what you want to learn more about, and just kind of get started getting connected in that direction. See if there's something you can volunteer for or get started at your current job or school. You'd be surprised how many companies actually have really great, green teams or something that you can get involved with, or maybe your school has a project that you can get started on.
And Trish, along those lines, we had someone also ask, let's say they're at a company and they want to convince their company to give them that sort of experience and allow them to work on a little side project to make sure the waste that they're using is indeed circular and they're purchasing the right things, whatever it is. How do they convince the higher ups that, they should let them do this?
So, I'd say if there isn't currently a lot of sustainability action happening at your company, it's an incredible opportunity for you to maybe start something. So you can talk to others in your company to learn about why nothing exists. Maybe there's a good reason. Maybe there's a key stakeholder who is not interested, or maybe they've had bad experiences in the past. You never know. So ask around. And also try to figure out, who the important players are there, who would need to approve the creation of something new, that sort of thing. And then, do your research to develop and present your ideas to the right decision makers, ensuring that you've addressed any major roadblocks or existing barriers that you've learned about from these conversations. And it's also really helpful to do some benchmarking as part of that research. When you're preparing a conversation with someone, in your company, make sure that you highlight what their competitors are doing or how it's benefited them. Oftentimes executive teams don't like to hear that they're the only ones who haven't published a sustainability report, or they're the only folks who haven't set reductions targets. And that can be really motivating.
I think that's all great advice for someone who's in a company. And you might also discover a champion that you didn't know existed, and those can be really powerful. So I think another thing that these people are wondering about is, do I need a master's degree? Do I need a certain credential or certification to break in? What do you tell people when they ask you about that?
So I hate to say it, but it really depends.
I know. I figured that was the answer.
It all depends. But for example, if you want to get into life cycle assessment, then you almost certainly need a master's degree in engineering or chemistry or something like that. A lot of people who work in corporate sustainability or supply chain have MBAs, some of which concentrated in sustainability or, took dedicated classes in sustainability, and others, just focused on core skills like strategy or operations, and then kind of pivoted into sustainability. And still others get a master's of public policy. There's a lot of sustainability related work in energy policy or city level sustainability offices and organizations like the UN. So like I said earlier, you really need to do your research on what kind of work you want to do when you're finished and find a program that will help you get there. And I'd also say try to find a program that will give you lots of good options. So a strong foundational MBA program will give you skills that will qualify you for roles beyond just sustainability. So if your career goals change later on, you should be covered there.
And Trish, following up on that later on idea, how about we transition to ask how this advice might change for mid-level professionals working outside the industry that want to break in? So maybe they've been in the workforce for 10, 15, 20 years or so.
Mm-hmm. So So generally, if you're moving into sustainability when you've been developing those other skills for a while, it's generally called pivoting. And so if you want to start Googling that, there's a lot of advice out there on how to pivot. Some good, some not so great. But when you want to pivot into sustainability, you need to take a really good inventory of your skills and experiences and try to figure out how they apply to the sustainability world. For example, if you've worked in supply chain your entire career, but you haven't thought about circular economy or sustainable materials, that's a really natural pivot. So start learning about those issues and then try to apply them to your current role. I'd also say try not to pivot too far away from your most valuable skill sets. It'd be easier to pivot from a career in investment banking to working for a clean tech venture fund than it would be to move, from investment banking to corporate sustainability.
Mm-hmm. So, Trish, I think we've hit on most of the buckets of listeners that we have, and we've hit on the questions that we got from our listeners. But perhaps there's some nugget of information that we didn't hit that you think is important for people to understand about sustainability careers or keep in mind as they look for that next opportunity. Anything else you want to share?
I guess just some encouragement. It's hard. It's like really hard to get a job in this space. It's really competitive, and you will hear no a lot, or even worse, nothing at all. But that's something you need to get comfortable with. And you guys can probably both speak to this as well. But hearing no and forging on is actually a big part of working in sustainability. You need that tenacity if you're going to be a change agent. So, definitely remember that your ability to get a job in this space is going to depend on three things: how marketable your skills and experiences are, how much effort you put into the job search, and luck. It's really important to remember that luck is a component here. Just because you haven't gotten a job yet, it doesn't mean that your skills aren't in demand or that you're not working hard enough at finding a job. Sometimes you just need a little luck too. And if you're feeling really stuck, that's a big part of why career coaches exist. Maybe you need help with your approach to the search, or maybe you're applying to totally the wrong roles, or maybe you're doing everything right and it just hasn't been your moment yet. I've absolutely talked to people like that, and I've talked them out of signing up for coaching sessions, because you can be doing everything right and just not have struggled yet. So definitely keep at it.
Trish, you bring up coaching. If there is a listener out there that what you've said resonates with them, they could use some extra help, and they also want to check out the resources that you've provided online, should they just kind of go to your website and they can poke around on there and go from there?
Yes, I'd say please check out my website. I put it out there to share with the world. There's a lot of great free stuff on there to try to help you make your job search easier. I have a newsletter. It's been on a bit of a hiatus lately, but it's coming back soon, so sign up for that. You can also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of jobs and other helpful job search things on my feed, but don't forget to include a note.
SustainableCareerPathways.com.
Yes. And if you're interested in coaching, feel free to send me an email, sustainablecareerpathways@gmail.com. But please be patient with me. I get a staggering number of email and LinkedIn messages every day. I can get back to everyone. But it probably won't be the same day.
Wow.
Wonderful. And Trish, as we do with all of our guests on our show, we have our final question for you, which comes in the form of a party fact. So let's say we're at some sort of networking event and we're out there and we're doing all of the right networking things that you shared, but someone has a question about careers and sustainability, and we want to share with them some fact or some nugget that will inspire them, motivate them, or at least help them understand the field of sustainability better. What might that party fact be?
So one of my favorite statistics from the Green Biz report was that 32% of sustainability professionals who've been in a large company for 3 years or less applied for their jobs via an online posting. That's really low, especially when you think about how many people just kind of spend a lot of their job search just doing resume drops. It means that 68% of the time, it's going to be something else. It's networking or referrals or, those personal reputations. And I think also, even though these 32% of professionals applied via an online posting, that doesn't mean they didn't also then reach out to the hiring manager or someone they know at the company via LinkedIn or other means to express interest and start a conversation. So, making that human connection it's really, really important in terms of helping you stand out and helping you get that job.
Yeah, that by no means the application ends when you click submit. There's all kinds of things you can keep doing to help your own chances.
Absolutely.
Totally. And Trish, I think with all this great information, you've created some pathways to sustainable careers.
Ah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Trish. And I know Jay and I really appreciate all that you've done for us. And I'm sure this episode will help a lot of people, and people will benefit from your resources and perhaps engaging with you directly. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Trish.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Scott, like any long and illustrious career, the time for retirement does come. And I think we have reached the end of our careers on this careers episode. So let's throw ourselves a retirement party and call this one done.
Do we have a pension?
Ooh,
to rely on?
What a good question for the folks up at corporate.
Yeah, at HR. Yeah. They're never helpful, HR.
Oh, God, even here on the podcast. Jeez. All right. So, listeners, are you an educator or a student that is using our podcast in your class? If so, reach out to us at hosts@sustainabilitydefined.com. That's hosts, HOSTS. We want to spotlight you and develop an online resource for more educators and students around the world. Let us know. Next, listeners, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and on Apple Podcasts specifically, please rate and leave us a review. Scott, I believe you've got one coming up hot for us.
Yeah, I mean, the rate and review, it helps us show up in searches, so it really does help. And here we've got, Jay, I don't know if we're saying this right, CJ DiMacelli.
CJ, oh man.
Yeah.
Buon appetito.
And this was left, this nice note was left for us on Apple Podcasts on January 26, 2020, so just yesterday. And he titles it Informational Without Being Boring.
That's so flattering.
Oh, it's great. I appreciate the research that goes into each episode and how they are able to deliver it in an engaging way. I feel informed and entertained at the same time. Damn it, Jay, that is exactly what we're going for. CJ DiMacelli.
Grazie. And listeners, quick note, Scott and I, we're going to take a little breather and take next month off. So we'll be releasing a previously released episode of the podcast coming up next month.
So we want to thank our traditional suite of people, Square Peg Round Hole and Potions for the music, and also Matt Aarons, who is a social media god. He's the best.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
All right, Jay, I think that about does it. You all stay sustainable out there. I'm Scott Breen.
And I'm Jay Siegel. We will see you next time.